Anne McKeever. She's a lecturer in political science and she focuses on conservatism and on the radical right. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us today. Let me ask you first of all about the national rally. Marine Le Pen has framed her party's loss at the election as a plot by establishment parties to keep her party from power, that via the tactical voting we saw over the weekend. Is there truth in that, do you think?
So we've seen Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella in the last few days after the results were released arguing that the Republican front and the so-called tactical voting stopped Rassemblement National from getting into power, despite the fact that they got 10 million voters supporting them. So even though they come as the biggest party in the National Assembly, if we look at the share of seats, they will actually be able to capitalize on this chaos and instability in terms of coalition formation at the minute, because they would be able to present themselves again as political outsiders, despite the fact that they've actually increased their share of votes and their share of seats in the lower chamber of the National Assembly. So this current situation is actually playing in favor of the national rally, because they're saying that no other group has, enough MPs to be able to form government. So there needs to be a compromise found between very different blocs, and as rightly pointed by your correspondent, all these blocs have very different platforms. So it will be very difficult to come to the compromise. And what National Rally is looking to do is indeed to start preparing the candidates for the upcoming snap election. Indeed, it cannot happen for at least 1 year. But if no matter who is going to be in government, whether it's going to be a left-leaning government or whether it's going to be a centrist plus a right-wing coalition government, it doesn't matter. It will still help Rassemblement National to present the future government as incompetent, because it will be very difficult for them to pass the legislation. So they are going to play into that.
And do you agree with what Clovis, our reporter, was saying there as well, that they are effectively now, even though we've just had the election, in campaign mode again? They're working on the assumption that whatever government is formed, it'll be rather weak, and we will have an election as soon as possible, which is then in a year.
I totally agree with this. As I said, it doesn't matter if it's going to be left-leaning or right-leaning or centrist government. It will be very difficult for them to pass legislation, and Rassemblement National is going to capitalize on that. They're going to say that the government is not representing the interests of the ordinary people, and Rassemblement National will be seen or will be portrayed by themselves as the only credible defender of the French democracy. So it is unlikely that the government that is going to be the future French government that is going to hold for a long time, but they're going to need to wait for at least a year. And Rassemblement National is definitely going to prepare, in the meantime, start work on preparing their candidates, because their campaign, the results of the second round actually exposed quite a few cracks within the party and within the campaign, and they are going to start reflecting on this electoral defeat that they've experienced.
You talk about cracks within the National Rally in terms of how they fought this campaign. Can you give us a couple of specifics? What are you thinking of there?
So I'm thinking, first of all, that, obviously there were some of the candidates that have been quite incompetent. They didn't know the program of the party, and they also presented some of the positions, for example, on abortion, on Russia and on Putin, that diverged from the central line of the party. So the party will need to think about its professionalization in the future in terms of selecting the candidates that will be competent, that will be selected on the meritocratic level. Also in terms of the training that these candidates receive, because a lot has been said post-election, a lot has been unveiled in terms of the lack of training that those candidates on the ground haven't received. And so the party needs to not not only think about how to capitalize on the chaos and instability that is happening from other parties, but also actually what's happening within the party, because it needs to think how it can basically professionalize the party in order to get more seats, in order to get more votes. So I believe that there's going to be some work done within the party as well on that.
Okay, so that's your view of the strategy then of the National Rally. Let's, though, look at the other big groupings, those that are most likely now to try and form a government, the left and the centre. I mean, where do you think these different groupings go from here? Because as we well know, all of the groupings are really far away from having the numbers needed for an absolute majority.
Absolutely, they have so many disagreements in terms of policy. So currently, we're seeing today that Renaissance, one of the biggest parties in the Ensemble coalition, so they are already actually on the point of breakdown, because there are some deputies from Renaissance that are willing to form, a parliamentary group with some of the mainstream right, Les Républicains, but others are saying no, we absolutely oppose that. So we're seeing actually, internal divisions, as you pointed out, within other parties like Centrist Alliance, and within obviously the Le Nouveau Front Populaire, the left-wing coalition, because a lot has been currently the negotiations in terms of presenting a united name who will be the prime minister from that bloc are underway. And we know that Le Nouveau Front Populaire has a lot of internal disagreements, so they'll need to present that candidate, and they promise that they'll do it by the end of the week. So at the minute, nothing can be certainly said with certainty, and this kind of political instability and political chaos, where we're seeing different blocs having their internal disagreements coming kind of open, that will definitely benefit in the future the National Rally.
Just a quick final question for you, because we don't have a lot of time left. These elections were on Sunday. We haven't heard a big speech from President Macron since then. Why not?
Indeed, we actually haven't heard that Emmanuel Macron, he hasn't called any of the leaders from the left-wing coalition to congratulate them on, getting the biggest share of votes. So I think partly because Macron was hoping to come as a winner from this snap election, and despite the fact that, his bloc ensemble has done better than expected, the bloc has benefited a lot from the tactical voting as well, because a lot of left-wing voters voted for ensemble when there was duels between Rassemblement National and ensemble candidates. So I think Macron was expecting to come as the winner. He didn't do that, so now he's trying to rethink the strategy. I do believe he doesn't trust other political blocs. So he's trying to think, how basically to save his face and come out of this as with a relative, with less problems basically. But I think that it is quite surprising that he hasn't made any contact with the left-wing coalition, who has got the biggest share of votes.
And McKeever, great to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.